When an economy is unstable, businesses can't make long-term investment decisions. Consumers have no confidence in their purchasing power, and financial markets do not function efficiently. A dozen poor countries are facing economic instability and even collapse under the weight of hundreds of billions of dollars in foreign loans, much of them from China, the world's biggest and most unforgiving government lender. An Associated Press analysis of a dozen countries most indebted to China found that paying back this debt is consuming an ever greater amount of the tax revenue needed to keep schools open, provide electricity, and pay for food and fuel. Behind the scenes is China's reluctance to forgive debt and its extreme secrecy about how much money it has loaned and on what terms. Some of these countries have as much as 50% of their foreign loans from China, and most were devoting more than a third of government revenue to paying off foreign debt. Two of them, Zambia and Sri Lanka, have already gone into default. Zambia, a landlocked country of 20 million people in southern Africa, has borrowed billions of dollars from Chinese state-owned banks over the past 2 decades to build dams, railways, and roads. The loans boosted Zambia's economy, but also raised foreign interest payments so high there was little left for the government, forcing it to cut spending on healthcare, social services, and subsidies to farmers for seed and fertilizer. A few months after Zambia defaulted, researchers found that it owed $6.6 billion to Chinese state-owned banks, double what many thought at the time, and about a third of the country's total debt. Inflation in Zambia has since soared 50%. Unemployment has hit a 17-year high, and the nation's currency, the kwacha, has lost 30% of its value in just 7 months. A United Nations estimate of Zambians not getting enough food has nearly tripled so far this year, to 3.5 million. In Pakistan, many of the textile workers have been laid off because the country has too much foreign debt and can't afford to keep the electricity on and machines running. According to textile associations, around 7 million people have recently been fired from their jobs in Pakistan's textile industry. Once a thriving sector of the economy, it now struggles with low exports amid a deepening crisis. Pakistan is one of the world's leading textile producers. Its textile exports stood at $19.3 billion in 2021 and made up for over half of the country's exports overall. But many of Pakistan's small textile mills and manufacturing units that produce bedsheets, towels, and denim for consumers in Europe and the US are now shut down. The timing of the dip is alarming. It comes as cash-strapped Pakistan is struggling with high inflation and dwindling currency reserves amid the tough International Monetary Fund program. In Kenya, the government has held back paychecks to thousands of civil service workers to save cash to pay foreign loans. The president's chief economic advisor tweeted last month, "Salaries or default, take your pick." Desperate civil servants have threatened to go on strike. Some government employees have already. Kenya's financial crunch and economic crisis have been in the making since at least the 2007 through 08 post-election violence. The unrest large-scale displacement set the tone for the national currency's plunge and the World Bank's falling macroeconomic outlook for the country, chasing away investors and destroying the agricultural value chain. Sri Lanka's economy has been hit hard by rising energy prices. A chronic shortage of foreign currency and soaring inflation have led to a severe shortage of medicines, fuel, and other essentials. To cope with the short supply of drugs, hospitals are using a recently set up centralized system for supplies and coordinating among themselves. But the shortages are a significant factor for the day-to-day functioning of the country's health sector. Drugs used for treatment of cancer are in short supply, doctors have said, while pointing to a shortage of medical devices and reagents used for laboratory tests and investigations. China's stance on its loans to poor countries is characterized by a combination of economic and strategic considerations through its state-owned banks and financial institutions. China seeks to secure access to natural resources, promote trade relations, and create opportunities for Chinese companies to invest in infrastructure projects in recipient countries. These loans are often tied to contracts for Chinese companies, ensuring a return on investment for China. Many concerns have been raised about the debt sustainability of countries borrowing from China, prompting calls for greater transparency, responsible lending practices, and debt restructuring mechanisms. Experts predict that unless China begins to soften its stance on its loans to poor countries, there could be a wave of more defaults and political upheavals. In the past, big government lenders such as the US, Japan, and France would work out deals to forgive some debt, with each lender disclosing clearly what they were owed and on what terms. Government lenders can work out deals as part of international debt relief initiatives. When a country faces significant debt distress, either due to economic crises, natural disasters, or other exceptional circumstances, creditor governments or international financial institutions may negotiate debt forgiveness or debt restructuring agreements. It's important to note that debt forgiveness for foreign countries is a complex process, involving multiple stakeholders and careful consideration of economic and social factors. eToro is one of the leading exchanges in the world. Get $10 free of a crypto of your choice. Link in the description.